Every day, I talk to salespeople who are struggling, broke, second guessing themselves, and thinking about quitting sales. If that's you, this video is for you, as I'm going to give you some brutally honest advice. It's advice I wish I was told on day one when I first got started in sales, when I was really struggling. The advice I'm going to share, it's stuff that I did and it helped me, and hopefully it'll help you too. Now, if you don't know who I am, I'm Marcus Shan, founder of Bentley Consulting Group, in which we provide proven sales training and coaching for tech reps and teams. And prior to this, I was in corporate sales and sales leadership, in which I hit and exceeded my quota 13 years in a row, doing 100 or 250% plus, and hit club literally almost every single year. But again, I didn't start that way 17 years ago. I remember being fresh out of college, living in a small 800 square foot apartment that was shared with another roommate in Beaverton, Oregon, because I couldn't even afford to live in Portland. And it was my very first B2B sales job, my first real job. And my goal was to make $100,000 a year. I remember I was really excited for this opportunity, excited for this job, because up until this point, I'd pretty much only worked minimum wage jobs. And even though I've worked for literally 4 years, even as a kid, grew my parents' restaurant, I always made basically minimum wage. So this was, my first opportunity to make a decent amount of money. And I was really excited. And I remember just diving in and getting really excited to get going. And day one, I started to realize how hard it actually was. I remember going to my boss on the first day because I really didn't know what to do. This was a brand new division of a major Fortune 500 company, and there was real no training or support or resources. So I asked my boss, what should I do? And he said, hey, Marcus, I want you to go and cold call. And cold calling in the terms of that company meant two things. Either number one, making cold calls on the phone, or number two, walk into physical businesses. So my boss said, I want you to go outside, I want you to cold call, literally walk into businesses and see if you can generate leads, book meetings, maybe close some deals. I said, okay, that sounds great. Well, how many should I go talk to? He said, I want you to go and knock on 30 doors. And I remember this is a time when we still had business cards, so it's a pretty common thing. I didn't even have my own business cards yet, so I had taken my boss's business cards, crossed his name, write my own name on there. And I remember I was like, okay, this sounds pretty awesome. Again, I'm pretty excited. I'm very new to sales. I literally walk outside, I go to the right, and I start walking to businesses. And this is in 2007. And I remember I walked into over 30 businesses. At this point, I hadn't seen any progress. And I said, let me keep going. And I ended up walking into over 60 businesses that first day. But the thing was, I didn't generate any interest, any leads, definitely didn't book any meetings, and definitely didn't close any deals. I remember feeling super defeated. I'm like, man, that was pretty hard. Let me just ask my boss what I did wrong. And I went back to the office and asked my boss at the end of the day, I said, hey, listen, I walked in over 60 businesses and these don't have results. It's nothing. What should I do? He said, okay, the next day, tomorrow, I want you to do the exact same thing. I said, okay. So the next day, I'm like, I'm going to try it again. And I walked into over 60 businesses again. Similar results, no leads, no booked meetings, nothing. And I was starting to freak out a little bit. I'm like, this is crazy. It's 120 plus places I walked into, maybe 120, 130. It's quite a bit. It's really strange. Went back to my boss and I asked him, I said, hey, listen, what's the secret here? What's going on? And he said, Marcus, sales is a numbers game. The more hands you shake, the more money you make. We got to just work harder. We got to see more people. And I was like, okay, but I walked into over 100 businesses. I didn't even book one meeting or generate any interest. He said, no problem. Tomorrow, I want you to call all those business cards. I'm like, okay. So the next day, I got on the phones and I made over 120 calls. It was my first time making cold calls on the phone. And I was just nerve-wracked. But I'm just going to try because I've always worked hard in my other past jobs. It's always made me successful. I could probably do the same thing, probably will myself there. So the next day I got on the phones and I made over 100 plus calls. I called every single business card. And same thing. I got my face smashed in. People hung up on me. People cursed me out and did not book a single meeting. And I was feeling so defeated. And I remember second guessing myself, questioning, was this even the right move? And the worst part was this job offer that I'd taken to be in B2B sales was actually the lowest paying job offer. And had other offers or offers that paid me a lot more money. Not a lot, not a crazy amount more, but more than I was making at $29,500 base salary. And my parents didn't even want me going into sales. And I was just second guessing myself. So I went to my boss again at the end of the day. I said, listen, this is super hard. Again, I did exactly what you told me. And there's got to be some sort of secret sauce. I'm hearing other people make book meetings. He said, Marcus, again, I told you, man, it's a numbers game. Tomorrow, I want you to call those cards again. It's going to be Friday. And I was like, okay. And I remember feeling completely lost. And I remember I'm just gonna give it my all though. My boss told me just to play the numbers game, increase my activity. I'm gonna do that. So the next day, came in Friday, I did the same thing, made over 120 calls, called the same cards again over. And again, didn't book a single meeting. And I remember just feeling so defeated at that point after my first week in sales, where I was literally hearing people on my team, not a lot, but they're booking some meetings, some people even closed some deals. And here I was like literally outworking everyone, doing not just double, but literally 3-4x the activity. And man, I wasn't getting any type of result. Next week, I basically kind of repeated a very similar schedule to new businesses. And again, there was no result. I didn't book any meetings. I didn't obviously close any deals. And I was second guessing myself and wondering, oh my God, is this what sales is like? Am I even good at this job? Can I even do this job? And I remember it was really frustrating and actually quite depressing because I thought I was giving it my best. And after several weeks of the struggle, just feeling like I'm in a hamster wheel, just not making any progress, that's when I realized hard truth number one, which is my best simply wasn't good enough. And that was a really hard pill to swallow because in the past, I always felt like I could work hard and get results. And here I was literally outworking everybody, but my skills were just not there. I just simply wasn't good at my job. And that was really hard to just look in the mirror and have that type of ownership because my boss was telling me, just Marcus, you got to see more people, you got to make more calls, you got to keep knocking on doors, you got to generate more activity, generate more leads. But the reality is, when I was as bad as me, meaning 0% conversion to booked meetings, to obviously any closed deals, well, simply multiplying by more activity is the same. It leads to the same bad result. If I'm trying to go on a road trip somewhere, if I'm going the wrong direction, no matter how hard I work, no matter how much time I put in to go in the wrong direction, I'm still not going to make it to my actual destination. At that point, I was feeling so frustrated. Then I was like, you know what? This is not my fault. I'm working super hard. I put in the hours in. This is my boss's fault because he didn't provide me any training, coaching. They definitely didn't provide me any support, any resources. They did give me a manual written by people who never done the job before, which was pretty useless. I was mad at the economy because we were entering into the 2008 recession. Things were starting to get really bad. Little businesses were shutting down. Unemployment was skyrocketing. I could see little businesses shutting down. I played my territory. I had 4 zip codes, while all my peers had 2, 3, 4x zip codes. They literally had 2, 3, 4x the prospect counts that I had. I was mad at marketing. There was no marketing. There was no leads. There was absolutely nothing. I was mad about even PMF. I didn't know what that was at the time, product market fit, but because we were a new division of a major Fortune 500 company, it wasn't proven in this market. I didn't even know if people even wanted our stuff. So like nobody knew who we were. It was so hard. I remember just blaming literally everyone and everything. I would see as my peers, again, they would close some deals. They're just lucky. I'll just find any reason just to basically blame all of them. And that's when I realized hard truth number 2, which is lame people blame people. I remember talking to my girlfriend, now wife, my girlfriend at the time, and I was complaining about all those things I just mentioned and telling her about how terrible the situation was, how bad it was, how I made a terrible mistake, that it wasn't my fault, it was literally everyone else's fault. And she said, all those things might be true. Your boss maybe didn't give you the training and support resources. Maybe some people got lucky. Yes, the economy is bad. But now what? I remember hearing her say that and looking at her. I'm like, yeah, so now what? And it was interesting because that was when I realized this next hard truth, which is no one was coming to save me. So me just blaming everyone else, and all those things might be a real situation, the circumstances might 100% be true, but didn't actually change my results, didn't change anything else. It just basically kept me still stuck. And I also knew if I just kept doing that, I could blame all those things, I would probably get fired. And that was really scary for me to realize. But that was really important for me to just own up and realize that no one was going to come to save me. And I picture if I was lost in a brand new city, didn't know anybody, didn't have any resources, didn't have my phone, didn't have a map, didn't have anything, and I wanted to get home. If I did absolutely nothing, complain about my situation, I might feel better in the moment, but it wouldn't actually change my situation, right? I have to figure something out. I have to just take complete ownership. By simply just internalizing this, that's when I realized, okay, I need to take a hard look in the mirror. There's many things I cannot control. I can't control PMF. I can't control my boss. I can't control my territory. I can't control my peers. I can't control the market. I can't control the recession. I can't control mean prospects. I can't control all these things. I just knew I couldn't control any of those things. All I could really control was my attitude, my actions. And that's when I realized what I call hard truth number 4, which is I lacked the knowledge, the skills, the execution to earn $100,000 plus a year, if not more. But I lacked all those things to actually get to where I wanted to go. As I reflected back in my past jobs, they were all minimum wage jobs for the most part. In every role I had been in, there was a really clear path for success. I knew exactly what I needed to do to get whatever desired result. For instance, when I was working at my parents' restaurant, when I first started to cook in the back, I didn't know how to cook. But my dad said, hey, here are the ingredients. Here's the exact order. Here's what you do. Here's how long you cook certain things. And then I watched them do it. They showed me how to do it. And then I followed it. There was just a success blueprint. And I realized in any role I had been in, whether I worked in a speedo store to when I was selling car insurance for a car rental company, they gave me a really clear blueprint for success. And I realized this is the first time I didn't have a blueprint for success. And I wasn't one of those guys who had like killer sales instincts. That just wasn't me. Even my boss telling me just work harder or to see what they're doing, follow what they're doing. None of them knew what they were doing. Most of them just told me to work hard and be patient. That was useless for me. I needed clear like step-by-step instructions to actually how to go from being absolutely a worse rep to actually how to get okay, decent results and at least not get fired. That's actually when I started to get books and go to conferences, to get coaches, start to invest into myself because I want to have a clear path for success. And this started me on my journey of just self-development, actually getting better at my job. And overnight, I started to improve just a little bit here and there, but it wasn't anything crazy. Then I read a line in one of the books that I was reading, because I was reading a lot of sales books, psychology books, business books, personal development books. And I can't remember exactly which book it was from, but I remember the exact line because it really resonated with me, which was, if you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice. And realize, just like anything great in life, when you really want something in life, it's going to require sacrifice. That's just the reality. And as I looked hard in the mirror, and it felt very painful, I had to ask myself, how bad do I really want to be successful? How bad do I want to be really good at my job? How bad do I want to prove to myself, prove to others that I can actually do this job and have success with this job? I realized, even though I was saying I wanted it really bad, my actions didn't fully reflect that. The things I was doing consciously or subconsciously did not show that I was truly 100% all in, 100% committed, burning the boats, going all in, willing to do whatever it took to be successful. For instance, during the day when I was at my job, yes, I was working pretty hard. I definitely had high activity. I was doing all those things and I was like working hard. But then there was the after hours. And in the after hours, I was partying, going out drinking heavily multiple nights a week. Blacking out was a normal thing. Again, that's how I was dealing with just my depression and struggle with sales. Or I'd be doing mindless things like binge watching TV series, mindlessly scrolling social media. I'll just do things just to essentially numb the brain from the pain of having to deal with just the hard sales job. So I started to really think heavily about the elite in any field. For example, I love sports in the sense of the athletes and the mental mindset of pro athletes. And I'm not talking about people who just make it pro. I'm talking about like the elite of the elite, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants of the world, the Michael Phelps, right? And what was really interesting is they've achieved success at such an insane level. And the thing is when they worked hard at their job, it wasn't just at practice. It wasn't just at the games. It wasn't just in the season. They did even off season. They did after hours. So even between practices, they were also continuing to practice. They were also eat clean. They were getting coached. They'd wake up early and work out. They'd do all these things to work on themselves, even in the off season and the after hours, because they knew once they were on the field, that was go time. That's where they would go and make their money. And I realized for myself, I really didn't embody this type of mindset. And as I thought back to even when I was a competitive swimmer, that's how I internalized it. My identity of being a top elite swimmer back in the day, I was literally living the life of an elite swimmer. And I realized in my new job, I viewed it as a job, not necessarily a career. So I wasn't doing the same thing. I was like clock in, clock off. And after hours, like it's my time, I could do whatever I want. But the reality was, it wasn't actually serving me. So I started to make changes into what I was doing. I was starting to sacrifice all those things. I stopped going out to that same level. I still drank a lot, but not as much. I stopped partying as much. I stopped binge watching TV series. And I started to replace those things with things that actually would serve me, that actually make me better at my job. I started waking up early. I started to prepare for my day, plan in advance of exactly what I was going to do throughout the day. I would time block out all my IPAs, income producing activities, from literally start to finish throughout that work day. And I was religious to stick to that schedule. In my commute, I had a really long commute. Well, not crazy, a pretty long commute. It was 45 minutes to an hour one way and at least an hour on the way back. So I had at least 2 hours in the car every single day, at least 5 days a week. That's at least 10 hours a week. And instead of, listening to the news or music or, something like that, I started to swap that out and I started to role play literally out loud in the car, every part of the phone scripts to my discovery to everything else over and over, because I have a call block session in the morning. I'd run through my script at least 10 plus times, from the opener through the pitch to handling objections, planning for the worst situation possible. But ultimately, I was role playing out loud exactly how I want to show up on those calls. And I'm sure I look like a crazy person stuck in traffic, like basically like going like this, pretending I'm making calls out loud. But my point was I was doing, I wanted that repetition as part of it. And in the evenings when I was driving back home, I either would role play or I'd be listening to the books I got from the library, audiobooks, different sales books, leadership books, personal development books, because I wanted to change how I was thinking. And then even after I got home, instead of going out and partying and doing whatever, I would take my phone, record myself running through a full sales process over and over and over and over. And I did this consistently because I knew the elite people, they sacrifice those types of things to become actually great at their job. Because what I didn't want to do is just wait till I was running the product and mess it up. I knew I had to practice to the point where I could not mess it up when I was in front of a prospect. I'd study after hours, I'd read more books. I started attending conferences, started getting mentors to help me become the best version of me. Ultimately, I started to sacrifice all that free time for just goofing off to actually helping myself become the best version of me. Now, here's the thing. And this leads to my hard truth number 6. I realized I had to endure short-term pain for long-term gain. Here's the thing. Doing those things is super hard. It's super hard to be consistently waking up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's super hard after a long day in my long commute home to be role playing out loud or to listening to things where my brain is basically dead, to force myself to listen to like sales books or audio books. That was hard. It was hard then like to go home, eat a quick dinner, and then again, keep role playing, practicing to get better at my job. Those are super hard. And to do it consistently, night after night, day after day, it was super hard and super painful. And I wasn't perfect, right? So some nights I wasn't able to have that willpower, but I was pretty consistent with it. And the reality was I knew if I endured the hard pain now, long-term wise, it would pay me massive dividends. And I equate it to a lot like working out. If you're trying to work out for the first time, when you go to the gym, you start eating clean, you're not going to see any results the next day. You're not going to see it the next week. In fact, it may be months before you even see a level of progress you want to see. It might be years to get to the point where you want to actually go to. But I also know If it's hard now, it's easy later. If it's easy now, it's hard later. And being able to delay that self-gratification and basically learn to enjoy the process, embrace the process, know the process is the prize, and you'll become better as a result. It's amazing how much better you become. And I remember as I've gotten better over time, where I got to the point where this was 2011, and I was having great success, promoted multiple times. I still had to carry a quota, team quota as well, but we're on top operations at that point. And I remember I decided to make a shift to a brand new company, brand new industry, on a team that had been underperforming for years. And it's actually going to be a two-step demotion because I saw the opportunity for being able to go much further up my career, make more money, and also build more equity and wealth, etc. So I made a switch to a whole new company. And at this point, I realized the process is the prize, and that if I endure the short-term pain now, I'll have way more long-term gains. I knew I had big goals in mind. I knew I wanted to run massive sales teams. I wanted to deliver insane amounts of revenue. I wanted to build wealth. I wanted to just have fun, do it as well. I remember my first week in that role, and it was a full cycle B2B sales role. In this role, we did in-person cold calls, phone cold calls, we did all of the above. We have physical territories that run as well. My boss said, listen, part of this week, what I want you to do is I want you to walk into 50 businesses this week. All right, so 50 businesses. I said, great. That sounds awesome. My very first week, I walked into over 300 businesses on foot. Okay. Now it's painful, but the cool part is it wasn't about just the high activity and playing the activity model. For me, the reason I wanted to walk to over 300 plus businesses that week was I wanted, number one, I want to learn the territory. I wanted to learn the market, who the competitors were. I want to see who's buying from them. I wanted to understand who would practice my territory. I wanted to master my scripting. I want to master my frameworks. I want to master my ICP. So there's many learnings I want to uncover as part of that process. And the cool part, I'm several years in my career at this point, I already gotten pretty good at B2B sales. I think I ended up booking like 10 or 12 appointments in the field just by doing that. But on top of that, generate more leads, but also I just learned a ton because of that. In week 2, I did basically the same number of cold calls in a whole different part of my territory. Week 3, same thing. Week 4, same thing. So in the first 4 weeks, I walked into over 1,200 businesses by foot. Just to give you some context, the average rep at best would walk into about 50 per week. So that meant in that same time frame, while I walked over 1,200, they would walk into maybe 200 at best. And the thing is from a pure learning perspective, because I endured the pain as a result, what would have taken someone about 5-6 months at a time, I did it in about a sixth of the time. So I learned at a far greater rate. So literally, my learning curve was drastically reduced down to about a sixth of the time because I did it much faster. So it's amazing how much faster you learn as well. And the thing is even with me just doing that consistently and had a level of mind space, right? Within the first 3 months, most people that was brand new would close maybe like 100K total contract value, maybe, right? I closed over 500K in total contract value in brand new logo deals in my first 3 months and generated over 2 million in pipeline. The following quarter, I was like the rookie of the quarter, and they actually promoted me to their Captain's Club, which is like a developmental program for high potential people. I share that with you because the power of enduring the pain, it positioned me to do the hard things now that would serve me far greater in the future. That obviously paid off from making the money I wanted to make to results, to standing out, to getting promoted. Like fast forward 9 months in that role, I ended up getting promoted to be the sales manager, which takes most people 2-3 years at best to get to that point. Again, because I was doing the hard things that most people weren't willing to do. And even in that, especially the first 90 days, before on my commute, after hours, I'd be practicing role playing, all of the same thing that I mentioned before, because I want to really master this role as well, because I understood, again, embracing the suck now, doing the hard things, sacrificing that time now to get really good now was going to pay me long-term dividends. And that's actually how I was able to become a director in this Fortune 500 company in 4.5 years, where it takes most people, if they even get to that point, 8, 9, 10 years. I didn't really half the time because I understood the power of enduring the pain now and doing whatever it takes to be really good and have that ability to sacrifice for what I actually want in life. And this brings me up to my next point, which is hard truth number 7. Nobody, I'm telling you, absolutely nobody cares about your success as much as you. Not your boss, not your director, not your VP, not your company, not your spouse, not your family, not your friends. Only you can care as much about your success as you actually can. When I realized this, especially early on, especially my first role, I became obsessed with becoming successful. Some people talk about obsession in a bad way, but here's the thing. If you look at the elite in any field, whether you are an elite chess player, you are an elite gymnast, you are an elite parent, those people are obsessed about being the best version of them in that role. If you want to completely change your life, you have to become obsessive and relentless with yourself so you can make the changes that are required. I was relentless about becoming the best version of me because I wanted to become massively successful. If you really want to change your results, you have to work harder on yourself than actually at your job, because all of it requires you becoming the best version of you to do those things that most are unwilling to do. Because if you do what most are unwilling to do, you will achieve what most will never achieve. Hard truth number 8, chase skills versus chasing income. Because if you lead to chasing skills first, your income will eventually come from that too. I would see people, especially early in my career, they would be okay at their sales role, and then maybe they got recruited somewhere else that maybe had a bigger base salary, a higher OTE, and they would just quit and go over there, even though they were maybe just okay at their job. And the thing is as I followed them and watched them over the years, let's say, for example, if they were making like $80,000 and then they go somewhere else and they have potential to make $150,000, maybe they make 120, maybe make 150, but then since they never really truly developed the skills, I would see them cap out around that amount. And they actually end up going from job to job, never really breaking to the next level barrier for years. And what's crazy is because now, some of those people I've known now for, almost 2 decades. And when they made that jump, again, nothing wrong with how much they're making, but they're still making around maybe the 120, 150 mark, which is almost 2 decades later. And when you build in inflation, that's pretty crazy. Versus, I've always had a different mind space and belief around this, where if you chase skills first and you really master the skills, this allows you to stack skills on top of each other so you can make exponentially more money. That may mean you make less money today, but if you develop those skills, it can help you make far more money in the future. And I remember even my first year in sales where I almost got fired for the first few months, but then I was number 1 9 months in a row. I started getting recruited actually to go work for other companies, which they would double, even triple my base potentially with higher OTEs where I could make way more money. And I actually turned them all down. I wouldn't even interview because I felt like my sales skills really weren't quite there yet. And I knew, yes, I could make a jump, and yes, overnight I'll just start making more money. But what I was thinking about was, but how about 5 years from now? How about 10 years from now? Am I going to develop those skills that actually get me to that level to actually 10x my income? And I knew if I just kept making jumps like that, it actually would hurt me. So instead, I focused on stacking skills. The cool part was as I stacked more and more skills over time, the opportunities got bigger and bigger. And that was really cool to see. And the reality is I always view each job that you're in as an opportunity vehicle. And if you can fully maximize as much as you can, stack the skills, and then from there, jump to another opportunity, which may even mean you have to take a step back for a second, but then you can maximize it and go to the next level. That's really key, right? For example, my very first role, I had a base salary of $29,500. And frankly, even with the commissions and the comp over time, it really wasn't that great. But it gave me the opportunity to learn a lot of skills from sales, leadership, running full businesses, running full P&Ls, to the point where, I think by the time it was 2011, I was making about $100K, around 6 figures. It wasn't nothing crazy, but I was pretty much maxing out just because the opportunity vehicle was not that great. So then from there, I went to a whole new company, where I actually a two-step demotion where I would actually make less, right, immediately, but I could see the higher trajectory. So I made that leap, made less money, but I stayed in the opportunity vehicle for longer and got to a point where literally I was averaging over $600,000 a year with my high end being about 750, which again, I was about tapped out again between base, bonuses, and equity. I share that with you because if you focus on stacking the skills, it can change your life drastically. For me, again, to really hit this point home, I also saw from a future perspective what's really important for me. I'm like, okay, I could stay here, and I think I can go to higher level roles where I can generate more income, but do I really want to travel to that same level? Do I really want that? And I realized my life had shifted a little bit, and I had a kid and stuff. I'd much rather just do my own business and have unlimited potential. What was I willing to do? I was willing to take a step down drastically to start a business so I can go way past it. But the reason I was able to do that was I didn't chase the income first. I chased the skills. And I see a lot of salespeople, especially in today's time, they might sell for a couple of years and they say, oh man, it's amazing. I can become an entrepreneur. And because I did pretty well in sales for a few years, I'm going to start my own business. Nothing wrong with that. And they're thinking just because they were good at selling or decent at selling, they can start their own business. The reality is when you start your own business, there are very different skills you have to actually be very good at outside just selling. And that's why it's not uncommon. I see people, they leave and then they make a leap into entrepreneurship. Fast forward a year or 2 years back down the road, they're back and get another sales job because they actually didn't have the skills. They actually stacked effectively. So that's why for people out there, if you don't chase the money, if you chase the skills first, it will allow you to make far more money in the long run if you have a longer time horizon to look at things. Hard truth number 9. Success is not linear and must be earned daily. As I started to get results, sometimes what would happen would be I'll pull my foot off the gas. And this could be for everything. So for example, I would have a banner quarter and pipeline's completely emptied out. And then I realized, oh crap, the new quarter is coming up. And I really don't have enough pipeline. It's looking very skinny of a pipeline. So I work really hard to build the pipeline back up. And then I close it as much as possible, have another great quarter, and then I'm starting back at zero each time. That's a really hard way to just live. It's like if you go on diets just because you have a wedding coming up and then after that you're back on the bad diets. It's like this fad dieting or something. And the reality is I have found the most successful people in anything is they earn it daily. Most fit people who are fit year round, it's not because they just fad diet all the time. They're just really consistent in doing the hard things every single day, embracing the process and earning success consistently so they don't have to worry. I remember making that mistake even with prospecting perspective. And that's when I realized I just need a prospect every single day. Even to the point of, to this day, years later, almost 2 decades later, even for my own business, I still prospect every single day because I know how important it is to always be building the future. And success is a lot like this, which is, it's actually not that hard to be successful one time. What's really hard is actually repeating success over and over. That's why I see some people, even if they hit President's Club 1 year, that's great, but are you hitting club every year? Are you consistent as possible year after year, or are you a one-hit wonder? When you realize this, you also know that success is not linear. It's not always up and to the right, because there are things you can't control, but if you are consistent with doing the right things every single day and earning it every single day, your chances of success are so much higher. That's why I love that J.J. Watt quote, which is, success is not owned, it's rented. And the rent is due every single day. The sooner you realize that, because if you're struggling right now and you start to make the shifts and you start doing those things, you start to see some success, you got to keep going. You got to keep going. It's like getting in great shape. It's actually not that hard to get into great shape. But what's actually really hard is maintaining a great physique and maintaining that shape over time. Hard truth number 10. If you act like the old version of you, you'll get the same results the old version of you got. If you act like the best version of you, you'll get the results the best version of you gets. I want you to really think about this and let this sink in for a second. Because a lot of times people say they want change. They want to break free of being broke or being average, being mediocre. They want to be really successful. but they don't make any shift in their mindset, their thoughts, their behaviors, their actions, and how they make decisions. In reality is, if you want to become a better version of you in anything in your life, from sales to fitness to life to relationships, you must do what the best version of you would do who's already made those decisions. And this is how you start to make a shift in how you actually think and actually what you do. Let's just say, even from a fitness perspective, that's a really easy one for everyone to internalize. If you're not happy with the way you look, you're feeling unhealthy, and you want to lose some weight, you want to get really fit, you want to get really strong. But you're at a birthday party with friends, and right there, man, there's amazing pizza there. There are cakes and pies and amazing desserts. Now, here's the thing. If you just act as your typical self, which you've always done, even though you want to be in better shape, but instead you just go and you decide I'm just going to eat those foods anyways, maybe I'll work on it tomorrow, what do you think is going to happen to your results? You're not going to get any results, right? Versus, what would the best version of you do? The person who has already achieved a physique, who's already that fit, who's already looking the way you want to look, what would they do in this specific moment at this birthday party? They won't eat the food. They won't eat the pizza. They won't eat the cake. I'm not saying don't eat pizza, don't eat cake. My point is, if you want to change your results, if you have to make the decisions, you must think the same way. You must behave the same way as the person who's already achieved those things. Because if you don't, how can you expect to get different results? It just doesn't make any sense. Let's just say if you want to be really good on the phones, right? If in the past you literally just rolled out of bed, pull up your CRM, just do a quick search, just start making calls, and just see what happens from there, yeah, you can get the same results as you got before. Versus, well, the best version you do, they'd probably build a hyper-targeted list. They'd do their research in advance. It'd be curated down to the proper ICP. They have scripts written out what they're going to say. They would practice and role play it over and over until this pure muscle memory. They have every possible objection already memorized and ready to go. And they would role play to the point where they cannot fail. And they'd show up ready to rock and make those calls. And you get my point. They would do very different things, which leads to very different results. But the key is doing those things now before you even get those results. And I'll give you another really good example. This is 2007, early in my career, the first couple months of my sales career, absolutely struggling, wanting to quit, depressed, broke. I remember I was dating my girlfriend, getting really serious. I wanted to propose in the next couple of years, and I wanted to impress her family, have a nice ring, and do these type of things. But when you're sucking at your job, don't have any money to get a ring, pay for a wedding, do those type of things, and try to be a good spouse. And I was already getting into this personal development, and I was reading a lot of personal development books, sales books, etc. And I was really enamored with Tony Robbins. And I know some people just don't like Tony, but for me, it really hooked me because of the mental models I was learning. And I remember at that point, there's a couple months into my career, he had a conference coming up soon in California, UPW, and I'm in Oregon. I was very inspired by him, right? And I knew if I can go to that conference, it would shift my mind space and just to be in the environment, right? Because proximity is power. I knew potentially it could really have a major impact to not just my life that weekend, but also potentially for the rest of my life. Now, here's the only issue I had. The ticket I wanted for the level access I wanted, with all the bonuses, to flights, because it was going to be I think the weekend after, right? Really short notice, travel, food, etc. It was going to be around, I ballparked about $8,000. And that was $8,000. I didn't have it in savings, didn't have it in investments, right? I wasn't making any money. And my base salary was $29,500, and I was already pretty much paycheck to paycheck every single month anyways. And I remember thinking, man, I can't afford this. Yes, I know it's going to be of value. I know it's going to help me, but I can't afford this. And then, of course, I started to internalize some of the learnings I had learned from Tony and from other books, which was, am I acting as a person who's already achieved everything I wanted to achieve? So I'd ask myself, what would the best version of me do? The best version of me, fast forward a year down the road, who had already achieved everything I wanted to achieve, who was making the money that he's already making, what would he tell myself right now? What would he do right now in this moment? And it was simple. That best version of me would draw a line in the sand and make it happen. Especially if he knows the best investment is always in himself. Especially if he knows this will pay long-term dividends. Especially if he knows he'll do whatever it takes to maximize the opportunity. And remember, yeah, I was very scared, but I was like, that's it. I got to act as the best version of me. So I pulled out my credit card. I put it on my credit card. I bought the flight, went down there, and that weekend changed my life. Just in terms of the mindset, the proximity, everything. And I remember a year later, I had over 10x my return on investment. And it's compounded every single year since, because these mental models that I've learned over time was a result of that. And I've realized now, throughout my whole life, if I could just always act as if I was already that person, I will make far better decisions. I'll be far more risk adverse. And this applies to literally everything in your life, which is if you just act as if you're already that person, you make decisions based off that, it just puts you at a higher likelihood of actually achieving what you actually want to achieve. So if you're watching this and you are struggling in sales, you're second guessing yourself, you're wanting to quit, you don't think you can make it anymore, you're not making the money you want to make, you're paycheck to paycheck, or you're racking up all this debt, just know you have the power to change. And you have to decide that. Because if you believe you don't have the power to change, then you're right. But if you do believe you have the power to change, you're also right. So you must choose a story you want to tell yourself. And when you really break it down, the formula is actually quite simple. It's number one, take 100% accountability and ownership of your situation, regardless of the circumstances. Number two, get crystal clear on the exact path of how to actually improve. Number three, be relentless in your effort to execute. And number four, keep iterating and don't give up. Ultimately, like the saying goes, it's hard to beat somebody who never gives up. You got this. If you want our help to help you absolutely crush it, and you want a clear blueprint with our coaching support to help you absolutely dominate in your sales role, head below to book a call with my team to see if it's a good fit. If you want to see what I would do if I had to completely start back over with zero sales skills, zero experience, zero anything, and I want to make 100K plus a year in sales as fast as possible, if not more than that, I'll see you in this next video right here.